Okay, so part of your implementation capacity, as I mentioned, is your resolution capacity. Yeah. So as the name suggests, your resolution capacity is your internal and external capacities combined to resolve the problems that emerge as you try to implement and execute your design, implement your intervention, etc. No, they can come from within your organization, or they can come from the operating environment, right? So the more complex the environment you're operating in, armed conflict, etc., the more problems that will come from the contextual realities, and the better your internal resolution capacity needs to be, right? And a situation that is undesirable for implementing for impact is dysfunctional internal organization plus complex contextual realities. That's just like a recipe for disaster, right? So the more complex your operating environment is, the more complex your intervention is, the higher resolution capacity you will have to have internally, right? You have to weight them correctly, yeah? So this means having good analytical capacity, understanding what you need to analyze for what action, so not analysis for analysis' sake, but analysis for action, the gathering of intelligence and knowledge for analysis that ultimately will help in decision-making and action again, right? So you're not just, it's targeted analysis, right? Targeted intelligence, targeted knowledge, and we talk about all of this in the context and security management course in detail. Resolution capacity will have built a strong engagement strategy, yeah, that's targeted, and that's targeting the types of problems and blockages and delays that are going to emerge from the context and from the internal sphere of operation, right? So an engagement, talking about resolution capacity that doesn't have a strong engagement strategy is like, I don't know, talking about, I don't know, a sea without fish or something like that, no? But I can't think of a better analogy, no? So engagement strategy includes networking, it includes communication strategies, it includes how you're negotiating, who you're negotiating with and for what, and with what influence and leverage, how you gather information, no, in a targeted way that is geared to resolving problems that are already have already emerged or are going to emerge in the future that you predict. You're anticipating, right? So your engagement capacity, and all too often this happens, your engagement strategy, I see, and I've done it myself, no, guilty too, is that the engagement strategy is built when the problem is already big, rather than building it to preempt, yeah, which is the ideal scenario. There's no point having good analysis and good knowledge for action and being able to anticipate potential problematic scenarios if you haven't paid attention to building your resolution capacity. And all too often, what you see is this, again, I keep talking about this firefighting mode, or engagement strategies that click into pace when the problems already emerge. So this brings contacting a flurry of phone calls and networking and information gathering that should have been done before, and asking people to do things without having built any relationships with them, right, prior. So, I mean, why should people help you out when you haven't paid any mind or attention or time to building a quality relation with them in the first place, right? So engagement strategies cannot be always reactive. They have to be proactive. They have to be in place already, yeah? That's strong resolution capacity. Not reactive, and I only engage them when I have a problem. And the engagement strategy has to cover both enemies and allies, right? Not just enemies and not just allies. It has to be balanced well, right? It has to be balanced well. Because if I'm over-engaging with allies, I'm going to have more problems probably with not my enemies isn't a good word, people who resist or not fully convinced of whatever I'm doing and might block it. Yeah. So when we talk about engagement to generate influence and engagement to generate leverage, too often this is neglected. Yeah. So we have to understand that when we go to negotiate things, the work has to be done before, and I have to have generated either influence and preferably leverage. And I have to be able to understand that leverage has to be generated. It's just not, hey, I'm doing this program, therefore I have leverage. No, that's not how it works. Yeah. Leverage has to be earned. Yeah. And has to be real and has to be perceived by the other person as being leverage, right? If not, you don't have any. So analyzing at all times how much influence and how much leverage you have with different actors is very important, because you have to be able to identify who's going to be a key player in terms of creating problems, creating blockages, etc., to be able to resolve it by building the right relationships, not in a rush, yeah, and have a targeted strategy towards that, yeah. So kind of engagement strategies are a huge part of resolution capacity and need to be holistic, yeah, not sporadic and reactive. Yeah, and then resolution capacity as well is about, okay, what is my ability as a program manager to argue my case, let's say, within my organization? How do I get my important things prioritized correctly by the support departments? How do I get the resources I need prioritized when I don't have decision-making scope over certain common assets or common logistics things, for example? So I need to understand what is my ability to operate on my hierarchy, my ability to convince, my ability to persuade, my ability to argue my case, basically. Yeah, I need to be able to analyze that and build that capacity as well. And the same for my teams with their interlocutor, with whoever they're speaking to, right? I need to be able to analyze how past similar problems have been resolved and to what effect, and what the knock-on damage might have been, and how to assess that. I need to understand what my decision-making scope is, right? My rightful decision-making scope, because sometimes I have a specific decision-making scope, but somebody else is stepping into it, right? It can be often sometimes bosses, that your hierarchy that steps into your decision-making space and starts taking decisions that are yours to take, or it can be team members that step also upward into your decision-making space and start to take decisions that you should be taking, right? So you really need to make sure you understand from your job role what is your decision-making scope, your field of action. And then you need to analyze, are you being given that space, or is somebody else invading that space? And then you need to fight for it back, right? So an important part of being a program manager is understanding decision-making scope. And because when you have problems, you have to understand what is your ability to make decisions about those problems, or are you having to continuously wait for somebody up the food chain who is further away from the problems to make the decisions, and having things delayed and problems get worse because of inaction, which is a common problem with hierarchy, yeah? They don't see sometimes the urgency, they don't see the weight of certain problems, and they don't let you make decisions either, right? So those are things to always be considering in your resolution capacity. If you have hierarchical managers under you, you also need to be checking that you're giving them the resolution space as well to make decisions that are in their scope without bringing every single thing to your table. So you need to make sure that everybody is in their right scope of ability to decide and resolve a problem themselves, yeah? Because if everything has to come up the food chain onto somebody's table, they're just going to get overwhelmed with decisions, only have half the information, and start making decisions left, right, and centre without enough analysis. So that's one very big important part, as well as engagement strategy, is decision-making scope and field of action. Yeah. When we're in firefighting mode, sometimes, like as I said before, when teams are pushed to bring every single problem to their manager because the manager's a micromanager or whatever, or the team's insecure, and there's constant problems, and this can happen where there's complex interventions in complex operating environments, that there's so many problems and so many decisions to be taken that the correct weighting of problems, the correct ponderation of problems is not evaluated properly. So it's just like managers going to resolve without measuring, okay, which problems are likely to have a bigger impact in terms of the decision I take or I don't take versus others, right? Not all problems, not all constraints have the same weight or the same impact, right? Or the same capacity to have a negative or a positive impact, because we have to remember that not all the decisions we'll take will be the right ones. Yeah, only time will tell for a lot of them. But decisions taken too quickly without the right information or without the right weighting or without the right people involved in giving their input can have fallout further down the line. I've seen it like hundreds of times that a problem that emerges, let's say internally, can be caused by somebody several months ago, very far away, sometimes in HQ, having made a tiny decision. But like the butterfly effect, its consequences won't be felt until much further down the line, when it's so far away from the actual small decision or action that was taken, that they're not linked and they're not connected. And the same can happen sometimes when we have problems in implementing our interventions on the ground, and there's blockages, and we don't understand why there's a blockage. Sometimes these blockages can be caused by very bad engagement from a long time in the past, particularly when we've been in operating environments for a long time. People have longer memories than we do because they've been living there. So some people might remember something that was done 3 years ago, yeah? And then they come into play, and then their attitude is whatever it is, and you won't know what happened 3 years ago, but they do, right? So sometimes things can impact in the present that are very far from the past, and the connection isn't made because you don't know. You're missing a part of the story. That's why I say, particularly with decisions or problems that are having a substantial impact on your intervention capacity or your resolution capacity, need to be weighed and analysed without being in a rush. Yeah. So not all problems need to be resolved in a rush, particularly the more complex, unless there's a threat, an imminent threat, obviously. Yeah. But if we're talking about blockages, delays, and stuff like that we're not sure why they're occurring, then take the time to step back and analyse them before you rush to apply a solution, or you let somebody else rush to apply a solution. That said, you always have to be giving people the right space, but also teaching people as well how to analyse the impact of the decisions and the solutions they've applied to a given problem.